So here we are on Monday, as far as I know, isn't it? Yes, Pat, it is Monday, isn't it?
It's
And
Monday,
we're
Jude.
crossing
Yes,
over to, I gather that the breath of spring is breathing in your ear.
yes. I had to go out this morning, Jude, and I love. Well, I live in an East and it's a rural area, but I noticed that there's flowers popping up everywhere. It's actually, but there's also a mildness in the air today,
Yeah,
which is, last weekend was pretty horrific, but today is very, very mild.
that's
And
right.
you, and
Well,
you
I
get,
was looking at
you,
me. I was looking at my flowers, and while they were flourishing quite well in the little flower bed,
yeah,
it was such wind and cold and rain.
yeah.
I felt like going out and putting something over them because they were exposed. But today,
It's very mild, very mild.
really looks
And see,
very good.
tomorrow, as I noticed there, let's have our weather forecast. But see, tomorrow they're saying, it'll be a balmy 10 to 12 degrees.
Oh, sounds terrific. Sounds terrific.
Yeah,
Couldn't happen too soon. Anyway,
right.
let's direct our attention to matters of public interest. And we've got three stories we want to chat about. One is this the win of Rangers. Rangers came
Yeah,
back from the dead. I mean, they were bankrupt and everything, I think.
yeah,
And over the last few years, they come back and they romped away with the Scottish Premier League title.
yeah,
And a lot of the fans in Glasgow and in Belfast, in the
yeah.
Shankill, were celebrating.
Mm.
And some people said different things about it. What was your own perception of what you read, Pat?
Jude, you have shared it, and I have seen. I actually saw another person send it on to me, and I saw it yesterday. The Joe Brawley article. In fact,
Yeah,
Joe Brawley has actually done something that nobody else has done. He's brought so many strands of it together. I think the thing, Jude, to get clear, is it took a while for people to cop on to see the very, very different reactions when it's one side of the community and when it's the other. The Rangers fans came out on the Shankill Road and in Glasgow to broke COVID restrictions right, left, and centre. The police PSNI guy said we have reports coming in. Now, does he think this was the middle of the First World War? Well, they live in Belfast. Now, the big contrast, of course, is with the Sean Graham thing. As a young fellow, Mark Sykes was arrested there with flowers still in his hand that he was trying to plant on the memorial, and he had been shot 7 times. His brother-in-law, Peter McGee? I can't remember now. I think it's Peter McGee was shot dead. So he says that he is the only person who's ever been arrested in connection with the Sean Graham murder. Now, dude, I think it's been a slow burn. I think a lot of nationals are sitting back and they're watching the Dublin government. They're watching Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar, and of course the usual columnists in the Sunday Independent. Not a word about any of this until maybe yesterday, Joe Brawley's article. I think it's sort of said, this is what a lot of people are thinking. In fact, the very fact that I got an article sent on to me this morning by another guy who's a very moderate sort of fellow, and he says, look, this is what's going on. Jude, I think there's a lot of sort of on the undergrowth, about the way things are going, about the total disparity in treatment. As we have mentioned before too, the Nolan show and all the rest about the Bobby Story funeral, it was never ending. Yet, and of course, what do you call her? I'll shut up now. But Arlene Foster, remember, I can't remember the name of the champ. Was it Dungannon Clarks or something they were called? When they won the County Tyrone Championship, several, maybe 50 at most, ran onto the field, and she almost called for inquiry. Not to mention when literally hundreds, if not thousands, were on the Shankill Road. So
well,
there you go.
I think to be fair to Arlene, she did comment on it, but it was a sort of a mild.
I think she said it was unfortunate, but they deserve congratulations to Rangers for such a
Very good.
yes. So
Gregory
it was the
Campbell.
most timid condemnation you'll ever
Yeah.
come across.
Gregory Campbell, I have his words here in front of me. It would be a bad day for Northern Ireland Rangers fans if a hallmark of 55 league titles was to be fans in ICU beds rather than being able to cheer their team on to more success. And the PSNI issued a statement saying, we would encourage anyone intending to celebrate today's Scottish Premier League result to do so at home safely and within the current health regulations.
Yeah,
I think, well, first of all, I think our reaction from our side of the fence, so to speak, is partly fueled by the fact that it is Rangers and, Celtic, it wasn't Celtic. So, if you're cheering a team, if you see the opponents
No, Jude,
celebrating.
I think I can say honestly, no, I really don't give a monkey's. After 10 years,
I believe you'll deny this.
No.
But it is part of it.
No, I don't agree.
Part of it. It is part of it, Pat.
No, it is not. No, you're trying to put words into my mouth, Collins. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm trying to explain your
Rangers won the title. By the way, I hold the view this year that anybody could have won the title. Celtic are dire. They can't even beat the bottom team. So but anyway, Rangers won the title. No, it's the clear disparity in treatment of the two communities and the response to it. I think that's what I don't give a monkeys about Rangers.
I think you're right. It's not actually a matter, although it's in the background there, of Rangers winning the title and sticking it to Celtic and Celtic supporters. It's the response of A, unionist politicians, and B, the PSNI. And in particular, with the way that those same politicians and the PSNI
and the media
responded to other events, such as the Ormer Road. And really, I would agree with you. This has brought it into sharp focus, something that a lot of people were feeling. And I've written about this before. The number of people applying on the Catholic community applying to join the PSNI is falling off seriously. And frankly, I think if PSNI the next step for them would be to paint them their uniform red, white, and blue. That's the truth.
Hey, Jude, I wrote it down because I read Callum's article, Joe Brawley's. This is what he says about Northern Ireland: deeply dysfunctional, non-viable, triumphalist, institutionally racist, sectarian, homophobic, anonymous. Completely segregated, and he says Brexit as an unfolding disaster. What was it Charlie Hoy said? A failed entity.
That was a long time ago as well. And he was condemned on all sides for it, because the thing about Joe Brawley is he doesn't hesitate. Well, he's got one great advantage: he's a barrister, so he knows what he can say in public.
But he's also very good at laying out an argument.
Aye, exactly. And he also, he doesn't hold any punches, doesn't pull any punches. And at times I thought he romped out a wee bit hard, where he was saying, that Arlene said this, and then he says, well, actually, that was something else I was thinking of. So he tended, it's a very clever
clever device,
but based on a truth, which is a very, very serious matter. And that is that the police are going to find themselves unacceptable in the north among the Catholic community.
And
that was at the root of the beginning of the civil rights agitation.
But should you start off? You've said it. I've heard you saying it on at least 3-4 occasions that when the RUC was reformed into PSNI, everyone sort of said, right, give them a fair wound and so on. And there was a certain attitude and civility and whatever words were used. That is now dropping off almost back to the old RUC days, that it's a Protestant police force for a Protestant unionist community.
Well, I'm not going to go into details, but I can tell you from personal experience that for quite some time, the PSNI has been dropping off in terms of their neutrality. It's just small things.
That's
where they were before and suddenly they're gone. So I think it's very serious, and it's good in a way that Joe Brawley has brought people's attention to that article. It's now up to other people to say, well, what should be done about it? I think
it's worth mentioning that the Sunday Independent has been a key informer or influencer in the whole viewing of the North through the prism of their columnists. Owen Harris, Eilish O'Hanlon, I could keep going. There's 3 or 4 more, all of whom are basically of the West Brit unionist persuasion. Like the nationalists and Republicans in the North are the blame community, etc., and that the unionists are, the victim community. Now that is a travesty when you consider the fact that for 50 years, it was a one-party state, 93% police force, RUC. They were certainly not Catholic. the B specials, the segregation, the bigotry, the job discrimination, to turn that around and say that the nationalists are to blame for rebelling against that is, to me, that I find, any normal society where the pressure, like you can imagine, it's like a valve. When the valve opened and the air went out like a rocket. Well, that's what happened.
And politics seems to be going nowhere here. Incidentally, did you notice, we hadn't planned to talk about this, but it's sort of a side issue. You were talking about the establishment of Owen Harris and people like that down in the south. Did you notice that Alan Rusbridger, I think his name is, former editor of The Guardian, who was leading some sort of inquiry or, I don't know, establishment of investigation of the media in general in the south, has had to resign because Maria Cahill really condemned him for allowing who was it to write an article? Roy Greenslade to write an article about her some years ago. You okay with that?
No, Jude, I'm far from it. It seems to be now there is almost a witch hunt by people like Harris, and Maria Cahill seems to have the moral arbiter. By the way, I am not an IRA supporter, but I can understand why people support it. I have said this on the record before, Jude. I know Roy Greenslade. I've met him on quite a few occasions, not in recent years. Roy Greenslade never hid his views, never. But it's made out now that he was some sort of secret IRA guy or whatever. He's an Englishman who came over to Ireland and after Bloody Sunday said he understood why the IRA existed. Big deal. There are plenty of other people who agreed with him. The only thing is he was smart enough to know as an Englishman and the milieu in which he worked that had he come out with that, he wouldn't have had a job. Now we have got complete lunatics over here suggesting that he should have had the nobility or the whatever to come out openly and well, he would have been, as I said the last day, he would have ended up sweeping the streets. He would never had a career in journalism had he come out in 1970 and said he understood what the IRA what they were doing. He wouldn't have had a hope.
Well, I saw Rusbridger said that the former editor of The Guardian said that he was going to step down from his post because he felt that the thing was becoming, the story was about him. I think it's sort of absurd, actually.
The government backed him and the minister backed him. But he said that he would step down of his own accord on the basis that he was becoming an issue by the witch hunters of the Harrises and the Cahills.
It's sort of insane. I mean, here's this editor of the newspaper who employed a highly respected and highly skilled journalist who may have his own political views, but who wrote about cases, wrote about Maria Cahill. Presumably, he didn't say anything that was libelous. Otherwise, I'm sure Maria Cahill would have taken him to court. And yet the guys, years later, the guy who was the editor is affected by that. I think that's really, really daft.
Jude, Maria Cahill is entitled to say whatever she wants, but I don't see why her views are given precedence over everyone else's.
Exactly.
And she's quite entitled to make a complaint. I have no problem. That's fair enough. But I don't understand why people like Owen Harris are given a platform and Maria Cahill and all the rest, that their views supersede mine or yours.
Well, okay. Let's push on to another just as deadly in a different way story, and that's this question of AstraZeneca, good or bad. As you well know, the Free State 26 counties have pressed the pause button on AstraZeneca because there's was it Norway?
Norway.
There was several cases, 4 cases I think, where serious blood clotting had occurred. And they didn't know if that was related to the AstraZeneca or not. In fact, there were some more cases, a small number of reports coming in about blood clots from Irish regulators, as well as those ones from Norway. So the health officials in the south have said, let's hold this thing and just check it out. Meanwhile, the British are plowing ahead, and they say that we've administered 11 million doses, and no problem. And I might add that I'm one of the people that they give me a job of. So if something should happen to me, Pat, you will remember AstraZeneca. What do you think? Should they
Jude,
pause?
Ann Taylor, I think is the name of the woman who's the CEO of AstraZeneca, and she said 17 million jabs at least have been inserted into various arms. And the number of cases, she says, on a pro rata basis, is lower than what would be normally occur in society anyway.
Oh, really?
So so she says, like, she doesn't understand what this. Now, I heard one of the experts on this morning, whose name totally escapes me at this stage, on RT, saying, look, this is purely precautionary. And he says, and in a strange way, he says, isn't it good? He says, people are taking the safety of this vaccine so seriously. And apparently it's only a pause. It's not a halt.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's quite persuasive, and I'd support that to a great extent. But the EMA, Europe, I presume that stands for the European Medical Association, they have said that they found on March 11th, they said they had found the number of clotting events in vaccinated people was no higher than the numbers seen in the general population.
Yeah, I think that's what Taylor's saying as well.
If that's the case, the South shouldn't have paused, because when you pause, you're leaving some people possibly dying.
Well, you see, Norway has raised the issue, and then apparently it's been raised in Denmark. It's been raised, I think, in Italy and in Austria. Now, but having said that, Jude, look, if 17 million have been doses have been given out, and it's not. Hey, Jude, there's no thing when it comes to a vaccine that there's absolutely zero risk. Apparently, that's impossible. You're dealing with heavy doses or medications here.
Pat, you're a layman, and so am I. We're not.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it.
But we can see the good sense in that, and you know, the reports are saying, the EMA is saying that it's, you know, just like the sort of the general population. There's no difference in terms of illnesses people get. If we can see that, why wouldn't the Irish government see it? I
don't know. I really don't. Well, look, put it like this. My grandmother died from the Spanish flu. And I looked it up some time back. Apparently, somewhere in the region of 100 million people died from the Spanish flu in 1918. Now, Jude, if we don't want to vaccinate and we want to just let it go through the society and wait for the herd immunity, how many people are going to die? Now, the vaccination, there's no such thing. A vaccination is a risk, of course it is, but it's a hell of a lot smaller risk than the actual disease itself.
That's how I would say it too. Actually, Pat, I'm of a nasty, suspicious, cynical nature.
I noticed that.
You noticed that, had you?
Yeah. Keep going.
I had a thought occurred to me. The south of Ireland, the government, I'm sure, were absolutely bucking mad because AstraZeneca had promised to deliver stuff, and the EU had been promised that the AstraZeneca people would deliver.
I know where you're going,
and they didn't. You know where I'm going. I think, well, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that they can now point out there was a non-delivery despite an agreement, presumably a written agreement. And now there's some talk of, although we're not sure, blood clot association. All of that's not going to do
AstraZeneca any good, is it?
I think I'm cynical.
No, Jesus, Jude, do you not think I thought the same myself? You know, quid pro quo, you screw us, we'll screw you, you know?
Would they be that cynical?
Dude, it's quite possible. I would say maybe someone in the EU saying, you know, to AstraZeneca, you know, I can't use the word on air, but the second word is off. And, you know, and...
What are you thinking?
No, so I think somewhere along the way, somebody might just say, right, AstraZeneca is not coming out of this good in Europe at all. And see, when I think there will be a day of reckoning when all this is over. And if I was the AstraZeneca chief executive, I would resign before, because I think they'll never get a contract in the EU when this is all over.
I wonder, you know, if that wasn't deliberate, because it's Oxford. They very often talked about it in the early days as the Oxford AstraZeneca.
Yeah,
vaccine.
But the Oxford seems to have got dropped.
Aye, but it has clearly got British links.
I think it was developed in Oxford, wasn't it?
Aye, I think so. By British scientists. But I think that the British government would have been very, very keen to come out looking much better than the EU. And so they've done.
Yeah. And by the way, the other thing is, well, you know, your cynical thing, I agree. They see that today the British government is saying, no, we're plowing ahead with, I think it's 11 million more doses. You know, so they're going ahead and they're saying, and see, they're going to take the risk. See, at the end of the week, if they have about 50% of their population done by the end of this week,
Yeah.
No, they're going to turn around and say, we're so far ahead of you guys, and it's working.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the fact of the matter is that that's what will happen.
Yeah.
They will be even further ahead now.
Absolutely.
It's very hard to describe the South's conduct of the vaccine and the EU generally.
No, Jude, I have to
Just
just
a bit of
put
a
it on the
horlicks.
record, because Paul Reid, the chief executive of the Health Service Executive, was on the other day, and we mentioned it last week, and he said within literally days of getting the vaccine, 95% of it was in the arms of the patients. He said it's a question totally of supply.
Right.
And he also pointed out, and it is worth, he says AstraZeneca, and you could see his frustration. He said, have changed the order 15 to 17 times in recent weeks. In other words, and by the way, it's very complex. The temperature of the thing has to be, the needles have to be, and all the rest, and the delivery service has to be on a sequence.
Yeah.
So 15, 17 times, often at short notice, he said.
Yeah, well, that complexity you talk about, the needles being ready and the setting being ready and so on, but that applies to the Brits too. You know, they managed to get around it.
But hey, Jude, if you've got the supplies, you don't have to worry.
Yeah, that's where they're ahead. Okay, let's move to the last but not the least of these. In last Wednesday, just what would that be, 5 days ago? The New York Times and the Washington Post, as just about everybody knows now, carried a half-page ad, which was put in there by the Brehon Law Society, the Ancient Order of Hibernians, the Friends of Sinn Féin, and the Irish American Unity Conference, and one or two others, essentially calling for the Irish government to promote and plan for unity, and calling on the US government to call on the British government to set a date for the referendum on unity, Irish unity. Smart move, provocative move, pie in the sky move, Pat.
No, I noticed there's been a massive reaction down south, particularly over the weekend, and the papers here, that Sinn Féin are moving away ahead of the Irish government. And of course, the usual suspects are going bananas about that the Irish government were asleep at the wheel, and Sinn Féin has stolen a march, and they are now seen in America to be leading the charge to Irish unity and so on. Now, Leo Varadkar walked into it big time on RTÉ Radio 1 on Friday, I think it was, when he said the Sinn Féin were sectarian, and there was mutual hostility between them and the official unionists, which was a big problem going down the track. And he also came out with a famous line, and they're sectarian because they don't even have a single Protestant MLA, MP, TD, or anything else. And of course, I think, what's her name? Agnes, she's a Clare TD anyway. She came out right away and said, with the greatest respect, Mr. Varadkar, I am a Protestant and I am a Sinn Féin representative. So right away, hey, you'd think, by the way, Jude, that before you make a statement like that on the national radio, that you would have known that. But our Taoiseach, or our former Taoiseach, I should say, or Taoiseach, and our future Taoiseach, even Michael Martin called him the Taoiseach the other day. But anyway, he comes out with that on air. You'd think he would have known that before he said it, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, it does seem a stupid slip, because you have to go back and retract it. In any case, to go around counting beans, and say you've got 3 Protestants in your ranks, or you have no Protestants in your ranks, and therefore you are a sectarian. What a load of rubbish,
I can't remember her first name, but it's WYNNE, if I remember correctly. She said nobody in Sinn Féin has ever mentioned her religion. The first person to bring it up was Leo Varadkar.
Of course. And actually, Sinn Féin, as Republicans, they're committed, they should be committed to the notion of totally non-sectarian. I mean, that's what republicanism is about. And Wolfe Tone, after all, wasn't a Catholic. Do you think is it a good idea, though? Was it? Some people interpret this big half-page ad, which cost a lot of money, but I suppose there's a number of big organizations in there, and they were able to handle it. And somebody said to me too that is it you, Pat? Someone said that print advertising isn't nearly as expensive now as it was, because online advertising is taking over.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nowhere near as good. In my good old days, when I was editor of the Derry Journal, a full page on a Friday was somewhere in the region of 1,200 quid. Wow. I would say you could get it for a sixth of that now.
Really? Yeah. Good heavens. But the point is that nobody can miss it, because a lot. I think in the States, I think there's a lot of people I don't know, middle class, upper middle class, who would buy and read the New York Times, because the New York Times, in my opinion, is one of the best newspapers in the world. Now, they have their faults, but they still, so the quality of the writing in some of their stuff is fantastic.
The Washington Post is very good as well, Jude, because I regularly read it online.
Oh, yeah. Did you see that movie, The Post, by the way?
Oh, superb. Absolutely superb.
Yeah. Anyway, come back. Was it, you see, I think a lot of people would actually read that. Either they would get the Post delivered to them, or the New York Times, or they would have it online. And like myself with the Irish Times, they would read it online. And certainly because of the publicity it has got, everybody in the States, all the Irish Americans now know that was in there, and that they've made this explicit call to the Americans and to the Brits to act. Now, will it succeed in moving the Brits, do you think? Will it galvanize a unity of push from the American Irish?
Yeah, well, right here, I'll come at it this way. Remember, you ever hear a fellow called John Hume? You know, remember Hume's famous one? Yeah, apparently you may have heard of him. Anyway, Jude, he actually, and I don't think I'm unique, he said it one day. I said, John, how do you work out? He says, well, look, he says, we have 800 years of the Brits in this country. He says, us complaining to them, them complaining to us. He says, nothing was ever going to change. So way back in the 70s, when he was a young whippersnapper of a politician, Hume went to America, non-stop, building up contacts. And and it was Hume who came up with it. He said, we needed an outsider, somebody with a lever of power. And the one people that had that were the Americans. They were pro-Brit and pro-Irish. So he worked on people like Ted Kennedy and what he called the other guy, Tip O'Neill, and the four Moynihan, and the Governor O'Dwyer in New York, and then Richard Neal and all these guys. Yeah. And apparently, this is I heard this from several people. After the first meeting, Ronnie Reagan and Margaret Thatcher had, and they discussed all sorts of world events. And apparently, as she was closing over her briefcase or whatever it was, he turned around to her and he says, Ronnie turned around to her and said, Margaret, what can you do for my friend John Hume? You know, so you tell me. I think the Sinn Féin have realized the Americans have serious influence on what happens over here. Clinton played a big role in the Good Friday Agreement on both sides, and the fact that he gave a visa to Joe Cahill, that broke a logjam on that. And hey, Jude, I was in America in '72, and I met not an awful lot, but there was this sort of nostalgia for Ireland, for the old way. And these people, hey, they believed in Irish unity like you wouldn't believe.
Well, do you not think, Pat, that there was two things happening there? One was that John Hume, as you rightly say, saw that the combined forces of American Irish or Irish American politicians like Tip O'Neill and Moynihan and so on, that they would be capable of exerting pressure to get some movement from the British in terms of the North. Do you not think they also were countering what was a serious problem for them at the time? And that is that many Irish Americans were behind, I'm not going to name the institution, but you know the group that I'm talking about. Yeah. There was Irish American involvement in the procuring of arms to be sent to Northern Ireland. Do you not think it was an effort to sort of drain off that?
It's probably twofold. But Jude, there was also like these people. Like I should also mention that what do you call him? Sammy Wilson on Russia Today last week. He referred to Joe Biden as that ignoramus in the White House. So that charm offensive by unionists isn't working too well at the moment. So Sinn Féin are going to America on a charm offensive, and the unionists are going on. Like here are the people who love Trump, and a bigot and a racist and whatever else. And here's a guy, Joe Biden, who's done nothing other than saying, I support the Good Friday Agreement, and they're calling him an ignoramus. You can see for the next 4 years how well they're going to work with the American administration.
But I noticed you slipped my point there, Pat, that way back in the day when John Hume was getting the Four Horsemen, as they were known as, to support his movement, peaceful movement for Irish unity, or not Irish unity, I suppose, fairness in the North, that there was a serious cohesion, let's say, among quite a few Irish Americans, that the IRA was the boys and that they needed support.
Absolutely. Hey, Jude, NORAD was the biggest organization in America. It was getting serious fund, and there was deep concern about the Irish government about how much money was going to NORAD and what they were doing with it and all the rest. Now, there were a lot of smears going on about NORAD. They were and so on. But the Irish government, particularly people like Fitzgerald, wanted, we'll call it the respectability. They wanted middle of the road politicians. They didn't want it going to Republicans. And so the four horsemen, like they took Hume's what are you going to say, position in regard to the North 100%. They were 100% back. Hume, apparently Ted Kennedy had heard Hume speaking somewhere, and he said to someone, "There's going to be my point man when it comes to Northern Ireland." And from then on, and Hume had Kennedy's ear, and Kennedy was the big persuader with the rest of them.
And that's what led to, in fact, the Anglo-Irish Agreement.
Yeah.
Which was a real turning point in ways. Now, I know a lot of people I had respect for who were, if you mentioned the Anglo-Irish Agreement at the time, they would have hit
1985.
They weren't at all impressed by it. But at the same time, for the first time, the Irish government was given, well, maybe not the first time, but one of the first times that the Irish government got a foot in the door, because the North was always presented by the Brits as being an internal problem. And this was saying effectively, look, of course it's not. The South is involved with this as well.
Yeah,
they must.
Yeah, it was the fact that we're on the one island and it's what is it, 393 crossing points to suggest that the South didn't have a vested interest in what went on in the North. When you think about that, But anyway, go ahead.
I would sort of sympathise with them, to be honest with you, because once you start conceding that kind of thing, once you start saying it's not an internal problem, you're opening the gates there.
It was as British as Finchley. Yeah, right.
Anyway, I think we've kicked that one around long enough, but I just add with the last statement in this advertisement, they say it is time for the people of Ireland to have their say.
Yeah.
I think that's fair enough. Who's afraid of democracy?
Democracy, Jude, democracy, if the state of Northern Ireland can be set up one way, it can be dismantled. In fact,
I wouldn't want it dismantled the same way, Pat.
No. But hold on. What I'm saying, actually, let me funny. It was set up without democracy.
Oh yeah.
If the people vote to dismantle it through democracy, as far as I'm concerned, that's fair enough.
Oh yes, it's more than fair. In fact, you could argue if it was set up by the point of a gun to make
people of Derry and Fermanagh and Tyrone were not given a choice. They weren't given a democratic vote to say whether they agreed or didn't agree with it. It was just set up. Now, if the state is dismantled through the ballot box, 50% plus one.
Like a lot of people who would be disagreeing with that, but that would be my own position.
50% plus one is enough to keep the state. It should be enough to dismantle it as well.
Pat, as Henry VIII said to Thomas More, when Thomas More liked a piece of music, he said, "Thomas, your taste in music is excellent. It concurs exactly with my own. Your political judgment is excellent, Pat.
Excellent.
Concurs exactly with
my own.
And thank you very much.
Good day, Doctor.
Okay, Pat.
Good.